Welcome to Multimedia Convergence. In this lesson, we are going to begin to talk about convergence, multimedia, cross-media, and transmedia. Before we begin to define what is convergence, there is a question that begins to emerge when we begin to talk about this topic. The question is, journalists are embracing convergence for business reasons or to do better journalism? Here you will have a homework. You will have to read, and then you will have to think about this question, and you will make a short video where you have to appear or you have to create a slide where you're going to begin to justify your answer. You have to have basis of what you have read and also thinking about the question and the things that we're going to see in this presentation. When we think about convergence, we're going to think about multiple platform publishing. And then we're going to think about the journalists as multi-skilled journalists. What is happening nowadays? Nowadays, we're thinking about that internet has changed the way that people are beginning to participate, and they're going to think about uh, the way that they're going to think about media and how they're going to reach or to find information or to search for information. When we begin to think about this, we also think about how the journalists are beginning to work as um, different roles that are beginning to emerge, and that is going to be part of the reading that you have for this activity. In this case, we have to think about different kinds of society. In the world, we have had different moments that have determined what had happened with our history and the ways that we have communicated and even the roles of the journalists. First, we have an agriculture society. In this agriculture society, we had information and we have media, but in this case, we didn't have like the traditional media. We didn't have like television, and we didn't have press, and we didn't have radio. We just had like one simple way of communicate that it was by words, by sometimes they have like paper and some written information, but most of the population of the time didn't know how to read. So in this case, it was just the government that in that time was like the king or the kingdom, and maybe the religion were in charge of what kind of communication and information they wanted to give to the population of the time. What would be the role of the journalist in that moment? Well, that would be something that you can think about. And that moment of the history, we think about that people were more interested in how they were going to survive by working the land and the things that are going to emerge from it. And so the information is going to be a way to control this population and to make them do what the government of the moment, that it would be the kingdom, and the religion would then like them to do. After some time in our history, we begin to talk about an industrial society. In this industrial society, we're going to change a little bit more. Now we're not thinking about the land, and we're beginning to think more about like a process and how we want to have like many different kinds of products are going to be produced on series. Now we're thinking about machines and sometimes how people are beginning to be replaced by a machine. What would be the role here for the journalist? Here we have the merge of different media. Now we have press, that would be like the first one. We have radio, we have television, and we could even think about movies. Now we have a different kind of scenario. It's not like in the agriculture society. Now we have like different kinds of media. With this kind of different kinds of media, now we have the opportunity to give information to different kinds of population. But in this kind of information that we're going to give, we have we have the we have like some missed opportunities. One is that the media is always part of a bigger owner that has like all the capital or all the money. In this case, that person or that industry is going to be the one who controls what kind of information we're going to give and what information he wants us to give to the population. So in certain point it would be similar what it was happening with the agriculture society. But here we also have like the opportunity to have different kinds of ways to communicate. We have press that it would be text, we have radio that it would be the audio, we have uh, television that it would be the video, and we also have movies that could help us to tell stories. Other thing that we have to have in mind when we're thinking about the industrial society is that in the industrial society, people also began to think about other places in the world. And in this kind of scenario, we begin to see that the traditional media was limited just for a space, for a city, or sometimes it was for a country, but they couldn't reach further on. Or when they go further on the spaces, it took a lot of time, and maybe the information was not the proper one for what was happening in the other context. In the third kind of society, that it would be the information society, Internet was born, and in that moment it was called the traditional web. In this traditional web, we're thinking about 1969, and in a moment I will show you a video that is going to make you like a very short abstract of the history of Internet. In this moment, this society is going to change all the way that we're going to see media, the traditional media, and now they're beginning to talk about like new media that is related with Internet. But the transition was very difficult. At the beginning, the media was trying to put like press in the same format but just using internet. So it was just beginning to see like the same print but just taking it to a digital form. They began to notice that the audience didn't like this kind of process that just was it was just to take like the traditional media and take the format and put it in a digital way because they wanted to be like a more produced content for this kind of 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 a space. So at the beginning, the traditional web was beginning to have a lot of problems and people didn't want to go inside the internet. First, it was because it was very expensive. Not everybody had the opportunity to have computers. And the third one was because the content was not related to the digital part. It was just an adaptation of the traditional media to the digital form. After that, they began to change and began to notice that it was beginning to be like a very traditional way, and it was just to make the transition about the media or the traditional media to the digital form. And even Encarta in that time was winning more audience than even internet. So they began to think, what has Encarta that is different from the internet in the moment? So they began to see that Encarta had videos, animations, graphics, text, and audio. And that moment was when the multimedia was born. And in that moment, we begin to talk about Web 2.0. That gives the opportunity to the user not to only consume the information that they are going to find on the internet, but at the same time, they're going to have the possibility to participate. And there we're going to begin to have the transition between the information society to the knowledge society. In the knowledge society, we're going to have a Web 3.0, when we're going to have cross media and transmedia. But something that maybe could be like a question, what is 3.0 or Web 3.0. The Web 3.0 is just like a more marketing. Web, in this case, is not only for people to consume and produce information, that would be Web 2.0. In this case, it would be based on those two, and at the same time, they want to know who the audience are. So in this case, they begin to see what is the way that they begin to search for information, what kind of content that they like, and they begin to put publicity, or they begin to put ads, or they begin to contact people by their emails, because it's a kind of web that they want to make it a little bit more personal, and at the same time they want to sell products to the audience. An example of this is when you go inside your Gmail account and you begin to go inside YouTube, and YouTube begin to tell you, okay, maybe you would like to see this kind of content. As you like this kind of music, I'm going to recommend you this other artist, and I'm going to see, then I mean you like this kind of movie, so I'm going to search for similar things that you would like. So in the Web 3.0, they begin to take all your information to build an audience that will be related with the content that you're giving to them. And in that moment, we're going to begin to talk about cross-media and transmedia. So in this moment, we're going to see the video that is going to talk about the history and evolution of internet.
Okay, when I go through those doors, you cover me. Ow! Dear Tim and Moby, how does the Internet work? From Milt92. The Internet is actually a network of millions of computers. A network consists of two or more computers linked up so they can communicate with each other. It's hard to pin down the exact date of when the Internet was born because different people were working on similar ideas at around the same time. But most people think that what really got it started was the creation of something called DARPA. That's the research organization for the Department of Defense. In the late 1960s, scientists there created the ARPANET, which allowed computers at 4 different California universities to share information with each other. The network grew and grew throughout the 1970s, eventually becoming a big part of the early Internet in the 1980s. When your computer connects to the Internet, it becomes a part of the largest network on Earth. Every computer on the Internet is either a client or a server. Servers provide a service to other computers, like selling books or giving weather forecasts. The computer that houses BrainPop is a server. The computer you are using to watch me right now is a client. It provides a way for you to access a server. Yeah, some computers can be clients and servers at the same time, but let's not get too complicated. Well, your computer at home doesn't communicate directly with a server. Client computers actually don't know how to find a website on their own. There are lots of computers in between the two that relay requests. Here's what actually happens when you access BrainPop from a home computer. The first thing you do is type in the URL into your browser's address bar. URL stands for Uniform Resource Locator. Every single web page you see on the Internet has its own unique URL. When you hit the Enter key, you're telling your ISP that you want to see the BrainPop homepage. ISP stands for Internet Service Provider. Your ISP is a server that lets you access the Internet. Most of them charge you a monthly fee for this service. Your ISP will send your BrainPop request to its domain name server, or DNS. The DNS is like a phone book for computers. The DNS looks up www.brainpop.com and finds its IP address. I know, DNS, IP, ISP, it's a lot of letters to remember. Most of the words behind those letters are pretty self-explanatory, though. An IP address is just that, an address where BrainPop is located on the Internet. IP stands for Internet Protocol, which is the set of rules computers use to communicate with each other. Yeah, just like your home address, only instead of street names and cities, an IP address looks something like this. Yeah, it may look like total nonsense to us, but those numbers tell your ISP exactly where BrainPop's server is located. Once that's done, your request is routed to your ISP's backbone. That's the high-speed line that connects all the computers in your ISP's network. Your request bounces from network to network until it reaches us. When BrainPop's server receives your request to see the home page, it sends the information back to you along a similar route. And the amazing thing is, all this happens in a fraction of a second. Well, usually it does. There's probably something wrong with your ISP. Seriously, it's not our fault.
So, because of the arrival and evolution of internet, we begin to talk about convergence. That it could be the multi-platform publishing, and that makes that we begin to think about multimedia, cross-media, and transmedia. Tomorrow, we are going to begin to talk more about convergence and the different statements that it has. Meanwhile, we're going to close this session thinking about multimedia. Multimedia would be one story, many forms, just one channel. When we are a journalist, we think about a story that we're going to tell about a specific information. With multimedia, we're going to think about many forms that we can tell this story. So we can use images, audio, video, animation, or text. And in multimedia, we're going to use all of them to tell the story. But we're just going to use one channel. In this case, the channel that maybe we could use could be a web page, but it could be also a CD-ROM or maybe TV. To finish, remember that multimedia is formed by 5 main elements. Those are text and graphics that are aesthetic elements, and video, audio, and animation that are dynamic elements.